Welcome to Fantasy Fanline.
Hello, everybody. Happy Saturday, happy almost Labor Day, and welcome back to Fantasy Fanline, the only fantasy football call-in show putting you on the air with industry experts every week. As always, I am your host, Greg Scalera, and we're back for another great show today. As always, we feature different guests from around the industry to take your calls and answer your questions live on our show. So give us a call, 618-FANLINE. I will get that number up on the screen a little bit later in case you forget it. We are live every Saturday for the full rest of the season, 2 p.m. Eastern Time every week on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook. Find us wherever you like us. Subscribe, hit the bell so that you're always the first to know when we're live. Every episode is also available in audio format the next day, wherever you find your podcast. So follow us on every platform at Fantasy Fanline. Visit our website, fantasyfanline.com, for a full schedule of our upcoming guests and to submit a question to our mailbag if you can't join us live. We're a brand new show, and we will be relying on your support to help us grow. So as always, please leave a review, tell a friend to tune in, find us on Patreon, support us for as little as $1 a month to earn exclusive perks. Today's guest, for some reason, we have AJ from the Shall We Football podcast on our show. I don't know how he got through security. He crossed the moat. He wrestled all the alligators. He beat the laser system. AJ is on our show with us. As long as you're here, man, we might as well talk some football. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. I'm here by the grace of Mac McCorkle Jones.
Yeah, I thought you might have some comments about that. So AJ is the host on the Shall We Football podcast, on which I appeared as a guest several weeks ago, and I took home the prestigious McCorkle Award. Not many people can say that. I keep a spot for it on my trophy shelf. One of my proudest moments in fantasy football podcasting, an industry that I have been in for about 2 weeks. So that should make you feel pretty good, man.
Me, I always feel good, but I'm better now that you have won the McCorkle and that I'm here with you.
Well, we talked tight end rankings a few weeks ago. It was a lot of fun. AJ, why don't you tell the good people out there where to find your show, how to listen, and anything else you want to plug?
Yeah, so you want to go as far from any type of society. You want to get as far into the boonies away from any social ordinance or anything like that. And then you want to, hopefully there's Wi-Fi, and you can find us on, it's a Shall We Football podcast. You can find us on any of the major podcast platforms, Spotify, Twitter, Apple, that jazz. And then you can find us on Twitter at SWF_podcast. We used to be on YouTube. I didn't like it. So then we weren't on YouTube anymore. And now we are not on YouTube anymore. Yeah, we're not on YouTube anymore. I'm a busy guy.
That's fine, man. You don't need YouTube. You're too big. You've outgrown it.
Yeah.
That was a great job plugging, man. You're a pro. How's your draft season going, man? We're in the thick of it. Week 1 is around the corner. I got a couple drafts under my belt. I got a couple more ahead. How's it going for you?
So I haven't had one yet, but I have about 4 before kickoff. One during the show next week. So
that's fun.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my best not to comment on it because outside of this, nobody really cares what's on my team. And we learned that the hard way at one point when we were talking about our own teams on our own show. But in an avenue like this, obviously it makes a little more sense. So I imagine I'll be hitting one of the stages of grief relatively soon.
It's hard to walk that line of how many trade secrets do you give away as a content creator in the fantasy football space. I've been talking about this with my own league mates who have been asking me if they call in, will I give accurate advice? Will I try and screw them over? And I'm like, listen, that is a sacrifice you have to make as a content creator in fantasy football for the integrity of your show and your listeners. And honestly, if my league mates are tuning in every week trying to steal my secrets, that's good for my show metrics. So it's a win-win either way as far as I'm concerned.
Now, you used a word that started with I that I'm not very familiar with.
Which one was that? Industry?
Both industry, and then there was another I word that myself and my co-hosts are not very familiar with. I do know how to spell it and what it means, just no practical application of it.
I respect that, man. We had a draft. One of my leagues drafted last night, and we use a very little known draft format that I would like to use this show as a platform to kind of rise to the attention of the industry, and that is the hybrid draft. Are you familiar? It is half auction, half snake. It is the best. I made the same face when somebody first told me about it.
I've heard of it, so it's fun.
It is the most fun. We're about 5-6 years into it. I don't know what your preferred draft format is. I'm an auction guy just because I feel like it really opens up the avenues of strategy and rewards the people who do more prep work. There are only so many ways you can approach a snake draft, right? You can come in with so many strategies, but at the end of the day, it's up to the flow of the draft. I like the flexibility of auction drafts, but they take so long. And I'm sure anybody listening who's done an auction draft is familiar with committing 5-6 hours of their life to it. But really, the auction is the most fun at the top of the draft with the studs, kind of the higher priced guys who you really want to come in and plant your flag and get your guy. And then the back half, you're like, it gets a little draggy. That's where you turn to the snake and you just move things along. Highly recommend it.
That is, what round do they start?
We typically transfer after round 7, so we do 7 rounds of auction. This year we switched it to 6, and it moved even faster, and that felt right. Like the top 6 felt like the big guys that we really wanted to make sure that we got it just right. And then after that, once we crossed kind of the midnight mark, we switched over to snake. We cruised along. There's no automated platform out there that's going to offer this to you. You can't hop on ESPN and do a hybrid draft. So we just get on a Zoom call and kind of make a night of it and work through a Google spreadsheet. But highly recommend it. If you've never gotten to try it, give it a shot. If you have a new league you're starting up or thinking of making a change in your existing leagues, I'm an advocate.
Look, if you want to head up to Congress, I'll die on that hill with you. We can see if we can get something pushed through.
I appreciate that, man.
That sounds fabulous. That sounds like so much fun. I mostly do snake because it's if there are any newer players in a league, it's kind of snake is relatively easy to explain. We just had a guy on last week, a gentleman referred to as the commish, and we talked a lot about commissionership and what it means to be a commissioner and like the duties, responsibilities, ways of handling disputes in leagues and stuff like that. And it was really interesting. And one of the things was like, there's an accessibility factor, but we're going to be talking to a lot of people that are very familiar with all this stuff and who have messed up 1 billion snake drafts. And that sounds absolutely amazing. I would love to try that.
Yeah, man, give it a shot, and I'm sure we'll talk about it next time we're on one of each other's shows. We have a question coming in from Twitch. I don't know if you could see this in your comment section.
Yeah,
but we have a user. I'm going to throw it up on the screen. That is a much scarier profile picture once I blow it up than it looked in the comment section. It is from Smile Dog. First question: what is your biggest fear? Because this is a fantasy football show, I assume this is a fantasy football question. You can start. What is your biggest?
Well, if we're going to keep it on fantasy
fear?
football, if we're keeping it on fantasy football, I'll need to think about it. I had another one that was
give us a general one first.
Yeah, so SPF.
I didn't really invite you here for fantasy football analysis. So.
No, that's I wanted people to know what they were getting, which is why I wore this dumb hat and fun sunglasses.
It does set an immediate expectation.
Yeah, I want a precedent. So I'm very afraid of SPF.
Like sunscreen?
Suns from Papa from up there, SPF, which is stuff that burns your skin, which is why I'm a big fan of sunglasses and these fine hats that can cast a nice shadow around your topper areas up here. Fantasy related, I am
also
afraid.
SPF.
Yeah, also I'm still afraid of the sun.
Outdoor games, anything not played in a dome, stay away.
So I am afraid of a repeat of the 2016 and 2007 Notre Dame football seasons. That's one of my greatest fears. I'm also afraid of getting last in a league. It still keeps me up at night. I've been close twice, in my life, and in one of my leagues, you have to take a bath in ice and have a loved one take a picture of it, and then
that's a good one.
send it to the group chat. And we've adopted, in order for us to express ourselves more fully, we put maybe a small paper bag. And it can be a sign of any kind. What we've taken to is paper bags and then expressing ourselves via the written word on the front of that bag.
I like it.
Very afraid of getting last.
Feels like the appropriate amount of shame for the crime. My biggest fantasy football fear, I always say that if you put in the work and kind of the research into every move that you make, every waiver move, every trade, and if the process is right, you don't really have anything to regret afterwards, even if it's wrong. So I don't have a ton of fears in terms of draft process or prep work. I trust my process. I guess, the fear is luck. I mean, you can only put in so much work and be so good at fantasy football before luck takes the wheel and determines the course of the season. I have been playing fantasy football a long time. I've been in and around the industry for a long time. I have played with people who have never done it in their life, who just cruised to a great season, won a championship, and you kind of get that feeling of, why do I put so much time into this hobby? But the answer is like with anything else, like with gambling, going to the casino, playing cards, playing blackjack. You put in the prep work to give yourself an edge. And more often than not, that's going to work out. But I guess I am always afraid of, you have a great draft, you come into the season, injury bug hits your team, takes out your entire roster, your plan goes to pieces, and it's all about how you adapt from there. So I guess that would be my answer. Smile Dog on Twitch. I hope that addresses your question.
I'm sure it did.
Our phone line is open right now for anybody who wants to call in and chat with us live on the air. That number is 618-FANLINE. Pick up the phone the old-fashioned way, give us a call. That's what we do here. In the meantime, we're going to take some mailbag questions that we got from listeners in advance who could not join us today to dial in. So I'm going to pull some of those up, and we're going to talk about them. We're going to give the people what they want. I know I sent you some of these. Some of these might be new. We're going to start here. If you draft running back in the first 2 rounds, who are you targeting as your wide receiver 1 in the third? This comes in from Gene in Texas. AJ, what do you got to say to Gene? Who are you targeting as a wide receiver 1?
Oh, buddy.
I can pull up some ADP and read out some 3rd round wide receivers if that would help.
Oh, no, I came prepared, my friend.
Oh, that is shocking to me.
Yeah, if you take history into account, for sure. I feel like at that point, it's almost as if, and this might be a little early, but Allen Robinson seems to have been able to fend off any and every bit of adversity that a fantasy player can have, which is bad quarterback, no other wide receivers, very little production from tight ends. Tariq Cohen catching passes out of the backfield. Jordan Howard from a few years ago. It's a little high in the 3rd, maybe, but this guy just seems to be fall proof.
No, it's a great answer, man. I love Allen Robinson. I'm one of the only Bears fans in New Jersey, and that's my dude. He is going, I believe, in the 3rd. I'm trying to pull up his ADP, and of course I don't see. Oh, there he is. He's the back of the 3rd, the 310. So I think he's a great target if you start running back heavy or even running back tight end. If you grab Kelsey in the 1st and maybe your RB1 in the 2nd. My answer, I think the last guy, assuming Justin Jefferson doesn't fall into the 3rd, because he does sometimes, he's going at the back of the 2nd. So if you can't steal him in the 3rd, the last guy I think I'd really be stoked about as kind of my anchor wide receiver would be Keenan Allen. I think he's going to be a monster, and I am seeing him creep in the beginning of the 3rd. And there is a world where you can start running back Keenan Allen, and I think you're off to a really great start. Other guys I'd be happy to have after him, kind of in my next tier. I'm confident enough in Terry McLaurin and CeeDee Lamb if I start strong enough at those other positions to kind of lead the way with those guys. But Keenan Allen, Allen Robinson, Justin Jefferson, those are the guys I think you should really be looking out for. Let's move on. Speaking of CeeDee Lamb, are you drafting Dak Prescott with confidence this year from Sammy in North Carolina? That is a big question.
Yeah, That's a big old cue.
Yeah.
A great segue. I was gonna ask if we could make this segue. And you made the segue. It's perfect. So
that's part of my job. That is really the only reason why I'm here.
Should I be doing that on my podcast?
You know what, man? We can talk after the show if you want to take some notes. I'll give you some pointers.
I've got my notepad right here. I'm just gonna I'm just going to start copying your show.
That's fine, man. I look forward to the royalty checks. We'll do a trade off. Maybe I'll open every show with "Shall we Fanline," and we'll call it even.
Dazzling.
Listen, man. But go ahead and answer this, then we'll take our first call of the show. But let us know what you think about Dak.
Perfect. Dak Prescott never stopped being talented. My concern with him, that injury that he sustained, the catastrophic one, is not something that, it's not like you pull a hamstring and, you're going to be pulling hamstrings for a while. The shoulder does, it should give everyone pause. If it's not giving you pause, I don't know if you're really doing it right. Should give you a little bit of pause, but this guy never stopped being the talent that he is. Also, if you didn't know, he does have like 3 number 1 wide receivers ish that could be WR1 on some other teams in the NFL. He's still got Zeke, depending on how you feel about the tight end crew. That's whatever. If the offensive line stays healthy, you've got 3 all-pro players on there. If they can stay healthy.
He's got a lot of fantasy weapons kind of riding on his success this year. For anyone who hasn't really been paying attention with injury news in the offseason, he's been dealing with a shoulder strain that's been played down by the organization. The coach recently said that he's going to be full go for week 1. We'll see. AJ, are you buying it? Are you drafting him with confidence at the end of the day?
I think it would be silly not to at least take this into consideration when drafting. This is a guess. I would say I'm going to drop him less than what I'm assuming others will. I think he is that good. I think he's been that good. And to me, wins are not a quarterback stat. And this is pretty, that's a very prevalent idea in sort of the community, but it's not new. But I don't think his win-loss percentage determines how good of a quarterback he is.
Listen, man, that's why Gardner Minshew is a household fantasy football name.
Bless him.
Because wins are not a fantasy relevant stat. But we're gonna take this time to take our first caller on the show. I see one coming in. He's been on hold for a couple minutes. Hey caller, if you are with us, you are on Fantasy Fanline. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Well, my name is Mike, and I'm from Indiana, PA. And I wonder what you think about McCorkle for my first pick.
The 101, Mac Jones, McCorkle.
I don't like the way this guy sounds, Greg. I'm not going to lie. I don't like his attitude.
Yeah, you think he's up to something? He's here to get us trouble?
I don't like this at all.
Well, all the same,
I love the question, though.
All the same, he did take the time out of his day to give us a call and ask a question. So that's what we're here for. AJ, give us your expert analysis on Mac Jones, newly anointed quarterback of the New England Patriots. What are we looking at this year with him? What does it mean for his weapons?
Yeah, so you're looking at a guy whose first name is actually Michael, okay? And his middle name is McCorkle, and his last name is Jones. That middle name is where Mac comes from. If you didn't know that, Mac comes from McCorkle, which is huge for fantasy and football production in general. So, take that for what it's worth. I would suggest drafting him within within the beginning of the first round to the end of the first round. Please don't do that. We did that because we were in a charity event and someone bought our pick and then told us to draft Mac Jones, McCorkle in the first round. Outside of that, please don't do that. That said, I do think that he will be that's a hot take. I think he will be a starter. A viable fantasy starter. And I think he will be an awesome streaming option. You don't really have to worry about where you're going to get this guy because he's not going to be a super hot commodity. We love him because of the novelty. We're not huge we were never giant on his production, but he's in a spot where he's got two amazing security blankets if they can stay healthy in Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, and he's got a stable of running backs. This is someone who can get. I think you're going to see touchdowns, and I think you're going to see a lot of dump off passes that could turn into big gains. So I don't necessarily think you're going to see Jacoby Myers, being an easy 50-yard touchdown every other game necessarily, but I do think you could get some viable production for a team. I think to me he's worth at least holding on the bench, depending on how deep the league is.
Jacoby, you mean?
Mac
or Mac? Yeah, okay.
Our beloved Mac, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I think go ahead, caller.
Well, I appreciate that because I like him because I've seen him with his shirt off and he makes my body look good.
That is an important metric in fantasy football. It is. I feel like he is being a little bit overlooked just because there were so many high-profile rookie quarterback names coming in the draft this year. But, if you think back a year ago, Justin Herbert was kind of getting the same disrespect coming into the draft. I remember people kind of looking at his tape and saying, I don't get it. I don't get the appeal. I don't think he's got what it takes to be a high-level quarterback in the NFL. And he came out and he proved everybody wrong. And he's a hot commodity now. So I think that there is a world where that is Mac Jones next year. He's got the weapons. I like Jacoby Myers. I think there's a world where James White comes back to relevance. Mike, what do you think, man? Any follow-ups?
Well, yeah, but I'll hold those because I heard the take coming in that you can't say profanity and stuff like that, so I'll skip that part. But I'm wondering if Belichick is willing to give him the whole playbook.
I think he's probably willing to give him enough, or they would not have let go of Cam Newton. It's not like Mac Jones was the only option in town, and I don't think they'd put themselves in a situation where they're going to be restricted. I think that they think Mac gives them the best chance to win, and they want to see what they got. AJ, what do you think? I see the eyebrows going.
Yeah, I've got eyebrows, and I'm wondering if that might actually be a little bit true, in that there might be a sort of a trickle down in terms of what goes into the playbook. I mean, my point was that there could be enough, maybe lower level QB streaming production from Mac Jones via just tight end, dig routes and go routes from attached to the line for tight ends, and then dump offs to running backs. The offensive line is fabulous, and this could lead to a lot of yak for whoever Mac Jones is going to, which is why I'm saying I don't think you need those top-level wide receivers for what the strength of Mac Jones and the New England offense could be. And again, this is all hypothetical. We've never seen this, but Mac Jones for by most accounts has been fabulous in the preseason. I think he scored on every drive that he's had this preseason, either a field goal or a touchdown.
Sounds about right. Yeah, tight ends and kind of short passing game running backs are always a rookie quarterback's best friends. I think Jonnu Smith is potentially in for a big year. Do you take him over Hunter Henry, AJ?
I do, just because in the way I play fantasy, I do tend to take safer routes. I load up on on wide receivers and running backs because I've had the injury bug bite me too many times to not have a deep bench, and I do the same thing with tight ends. I fear the injury bug. I've lost out wins. League wins to the injury bug, and I've almost got last due to the injury bug before. So I guess that's my greatest fear, is the injury bug. Smile, smile, doggy. That's my biggest fear, is the injury bug.
There you go. There's the throwback. I like it, man. I think that the potential hype for guys like Jonnu Smith and James White have not really caught up yet to the ADP. I think that they're still being a little bit overlooked with the Mac Jones news. And I think that, if you're drafting this weekend or in the upcoming days, that is something you can capitalize on. If you don't get one of those top tight ends, you punt the position, maybe you're looking a little later. If Jonnu Smith is there are not a lot of later tight ends in your draft with that kind of top 3, top 4 upside. Jonnu's a great receiver. He's a great athlete. He's going to have a lot of opportunity. We know that the system is tight end friendly in New England. It's all there for him. So, Mike, what do you think, man?
Well, guys, well, I'm not as detailed with some of those. I find it interesting that all of a sudden these weapons are in New England and Tommy ain't in New England.
Yeah, go figure.
Really, right?
This call is very, very funny. Look, I like this.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you're having a good time.
Yeah, and I appreciate you guys taking my call, and I'll just leave you with it.
Go Irish, I guess. I am in the minority on this call, so I bow to your fandom as long as you're on the phone with us.
All right, Dad. I'll see you.
Thank you very much.
I'll see you at Thanksgiving.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Appreciate your call, man.
Yeah. Take care. Yeah. Good luck, guys. Bye-bye.
So do you think he'll call in again next week when we have a different guest? Is he a perennial fan of the show moving forward?
Well, one of the Donnelly clan certainly will.
Let's keep the questions rolling here. We have another mailbag question coming in from Jim, also in Pennsylvania. Who is your favorite late or undrafted defense to grab and stream in week 1? I love this question. I have been in a lot of home leagues with defenses creeping into the middle rounds in drafts. That is typically not the strategy for the chalk strategy, I guess, around the industry is to, wait for the last couple of rounds, grab a defense, grab a kicker. Who are you looking at in terms of whether it's proficiency for the whole season or just great streamers in the first couple of weeks? Who do you like in those later rounds?
So I like Green Bay. If you're going really, really, really deep, they're listed in the mid to late 20s. Now, I'm more of a personnel guy. That's where my strength is. Fantasy is something that I have grown to absolutely love, but my roots are in the game itself. And when I look at the players on Green Bay's defense and then translate them into what makes sense for fantasy, which is sacks and big plays. So if you're looking at the Smiths and Rashawn Gary coming off the edge, you have the potential to rack up sack numbers, which then equates to turnovers, which then equates to fantasy points. Now they will be liable to really ruin your week.
Yeah,
but they also could. This is perfect for streaming. Is find the matchup and then. I was going to
ask if that's a team that are you picking them up and holding them? Their opening schedule versus the Saints versus the Lions versus the 49ers. So potentially a lot of opportunity there. Saints is a lot of question marks in New Orleans offense right now. Going against Jameis Winston, who has been very friendly to defenses in the past. He does have LASIK surgery now, so maybe not as many interceptions. Don't know how much stock I put into that narrative, but there's nobody catching the ball over there but Alvin Kamara. So the Lions are the Lions in week 2. I don't think I need to say much more about that. 49ers, maybe Jimmy G still by then, maybe Trey Lance. Potentially a strong couple of opening weeks. Dude, don't even remind me about how the Packers are looking on defense. As a Bears fan, I think it's in my contract that I cannot speak positively of any Green Bay Packers on this show, but I really can't poke any holes in that argument. I think that's a great pick. If I had to choose, I think I would probably say the Broncos. They're not necessarily going undrafted, but they are kind of slipping to the back of the 10 to 12 team defenses drafted. They have a great opening schedule. They are looking at the Giants in week 1, Jaguars, Jets. To start the year. It doesn't get much better than that. Vic Fangio, defensive mastermind, coaching that team. I miss him in Chicago. I think they are as set up for success as possible for one of those value defenses. Any thoughts on the Broncos off the top of your head?
So again, this is another team from a personnel standpoint that is staggeringly good.
Yep.
My concern from the fantasy perspective is, what does Von Miller have left? And what is Bradley Chubb going to be good enough? Is he going to rise to a level where once Von Miller leaves, we can be like, oh, it's Bradley Chubb's team now. It's Bradley Chubb's defense. It's not Von Miller's defense anymore. I don't know. I mean, he's been good. Has he been top 5 pick good? I think he's been first round good, probably. But he's not Von Miller good.
Yep, I think there's a world where he takes the step to the next level, makes plays, and for that draft capital at the back of the draft, it's worth a shot.
Yeah, the secondary is silly. Unfortunately, those are for the corners being good doesn't necessarily translate to a high value fantasy. Good safeties, however, ball hawking safeties that get interceptions. Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson are about as good as it gets back there. So if you've got guys that can steal the football, big plays will inevitably occur. And those two are maybe the best tandem in the league. So that bodes really well for it. And obviously the sacks leading to turnovers and such.
I like it, and I think they're going to lean on their defense a lot in Denver to win games. I think that's why they named Teddy Bridgewater the starter. I think he's the safer bet, the less likely to put the other team in a position to win. I don't love the term game manager, but that's probably what's going to happen.
Every guest we have says they don't like the term game manager.
Do they? That's because you have a lot of intelligent guests on your show.
Yeah, actually, our guests are fabulous, including you, Greg. It was absolutely fabulous having you on. We have such a great time.
Yeah, I agree, man. If I had to throw one more out there as a super late kind of undrafted defensive flyer, the Vikings. I don't think they are getting much love this year. They were a mess last year, but how much of that was injuries?
Hunter's back. That's huge.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be the same team this year. I think they're going to throw a lot less. I think they're going to run a lot more, lean on the defense. We can discuss the implications of that for Justin Jefferson and maybe some of the other weapons later who are being drafted like they're going to perform the way they did last year, but I don't think they're going to have to. I think that they were in a lot of shootouts they didn't need to be in last year. What's your take on the personnel in Minnesota on defense?
So Hunter coming back is unbelievable. From a locker room standpoint, Everson Griffin is back. Is that an N or a TH at the end? My apologies,
That's a great
Everson.
Question.
My sincerest apologies, Everson. We're actually pronunciation is very important to us.
Everson G. Big
Everson
fan
G.
of the show. I'm sure he's listening right now, shaking his head and writing me an angry letter as we speak.
Just call in, Ev. Don't write. Call in.
Well, I hope he writes so we could see how he spells his name when he signs it at the end of the letter, and then I could take a picture and send it to you, and we will answer the question.
Bingo.
Yeah.
I like what they've done along the defensive line. It should be better. Frankly, if nothing else was done and Danielle Hunter came back, that would be leaps and bounds better. They have one of the best pass rushers in the game that they had sitting on the sideline last year that is back. Harrison Smith is locked up, one of the best safeties in the game. They have somewhat revamped that cornerback room. Kendricks and Barr, the linebackers, are still fabulous players. I think there might be some growing pains this year, but Hunter, Kendricks, Barr, Smith are some of the best at their positions. My concern with them is if that front line doesn't get consistent pressure, I don't know where the fantasy value is going to come from. Mm-hmm. Smith is a ball hawk. And you know what? Because the corners are relatively unestablished, you could find, if they're better than quarterbacks are anticipating, you could see some throws anticipating these cornerbacks will not be ready. Lo and behold, they actually are, and you may get some surprise interceptions that way. When you have a guy like Richard Sherman, you don't throw to him because he's going to make you pay. But if you don't know what to expect, you may steal a couple fantasy points from interceptions.
Well, I'll tell you where I think the fantasy numbers are coming from. They were playing the Bengals in week 1. And, I think there's a chance that their offense comes into its own over the course of the season, maybe once Burrow gets a little more healthy and a little more confident on that leg. But I think that the opening couple of weeks are going to be rough for them. The vibes coming out of preseason on that offense have been unbelievably bad between Burrow and Jamar Chase. And I think that the Vikings really have an opportunity in week 1 to make some splash plays. And you know,
my apologies to Jim. I keep forgetting it says week 1 there. Yeah, that's an absolute dynamite stream for week 1.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd play them week 2 against the Cardinals, but week 2 is so far away. You have so much time, between now and then to figure out something else. So if you're taking a dart throw in the last round just to kind of beat out the waiver process and grab somebody for week 1, take a shot on the Vikings if everybody else is gone. So let's keep it rolling. Our next question, this was a late one. I'm not sure if we looked at this one in advance, but we have Trevor in New Jersey saying, I am a first-time commissioner this year. Got any advice? Yes, Trevor, we do have advice. Do you have any off the top of your head? Do you want me to start?
I do. We had the commish at the commish show on Twitter. Reginald James, amazing guy. Not unlike yourself, Greg. Amazing guy who specializes in this sort of help. His purpose, writing for fantasy diehards, football diehards. Excuse me. I'll clarify that. Is to answer questions like this, and we got a fair amount of knowledge from him last week when we recorded our show. And one of the things was, as a player, as a commissioner, I would say the same thing for players, which is, be consistent, have a plan. And I'm going to add in my own addendum. I mean, this is for fun.
Okay. So
make sure it is enjoyable, but the commish really he found it very important that commissioners be consistent and to be transparent. Those were the two most important things about commissionership.
I love that. Shout out the commish. That is Football Diehards. I just vetted that while we were talking. FootballDiehards.com. Check them out. I love that advice. The only thing that I will add, I think, is that I feel like, in my experience, the most important job of a commissioner isn't necessarily to run the league. I like to automate as much of that as possible. I like to get out of the way. I'm not a veto guy. I don't know how you feel about vetoes in leagues. I think that those should be reserved specifically for, potential instances of collusion or malpractice, as it were. But if you're playing with your friends or your family in a home league, I don't think you're going to have much of that. Commissioners should get out of the way, turn off trade review periods, let transactions go through. I think that your biggest job is to facilitate community in your league and interaction and make it fun. The older you get and the busier you get and the farther people move around the country, you'll find it harder to schedule that draft day. So find a way to get everybody together, whether it's in the digital space or, however else you can do it, and just make sure everybody stays connected and has fun and doesn't ever feel like they don't have any information that they need. Like you said, be transparent about things that happen, whether they're changes in scoring or the system or moves happening behind the scenes. You never want people to feel like they're out of the loop, and that is your job. Communicate and, make it fun, whether that's writing things on your message board, taking a look at the teams. A lot of podcasts come up just for in bigger home leagues. They like to get on and talk and do things just for fun. And, 10 people watch it. That's great. So that is my advice to you, Trevor in New Jersey. Thank you for your question. So before we move into any more mailbag, let's take a look at some recent news. Some of these, I was looking at these news items and they feel like they happened so long ago, but somehow they were all within the past week. I think just because we are around the game so much and so plugged into things kind of on Twitter and in the news that we have already seen these things kind of hashed to death. But a lot has happened since the last time I did a broadcast. So we're going to touch on them, starting with some of the oldest but still most important. Ravens running back J.K. Dobbins is out for the rest of the season with a torn ACL. It sucks. I was not a huge J.K. Dobbins believer to begin with coming into the year, but I did like him at his value in drafts. He is gone. Gus Edwards is the guy, if trends are to be believed. AJ, what do you think of Gus? What do you think this means for the team? Break it down.
First of all, I want to say that absolutely sucks for J.K. Dobbins.
It does, as a person, as a player.
Oh, man, that just stinks. And that goes for everybody that sustains injuries, and especially the type of injury he sustained. But, I mean, he was poised. Even if he wasn't a boon for us as fantasy players, he was set to be the starting running back on what could potentially be a Super Bowl team.
Yeah.
And be very good. So it absolutely sucks for him. We don't get serious very often on the podcast, and the three of us, including myself and my two other hosts, not very serious folks. But it just sucks. So I feel for the guy. But I love Gus Edwards. I will say that. Shout outs to Gus Edwards. PFF has loved him for years. This guy's analytics have been fabulous as far as I can tell. And I just like the player. And now, looking at his potential fantasy value, I love the situation.
Yeah, he's somebody that I don't think people realize how good of a player he is just because he is the second stringer on his team. But I think that there are probably teams where he could go and easily be I don't know about bell cow, but certainly be the kind of the 1A on plenty of teams out there. I think he's in for a big workload this season. I'm not really concerned with them bringing in anyone else who's going to take meaningful touches from him. They already ruled out Todd Gurley, I believe, and he's going. He hasn't skyrocketed as much as I was expecting in drafts. He's at the 509 right now. That's great value for a guy who could potentially kind of step up and be a strong RB2 for you if you don't go RB heavy early on in the draft. Do you have any concern long term for J.K. Dobbins as far as dynasty goes? He's a young guy. ACLs aren't as debilitating, I think, as they used to be as far as how far medicine has come. Should dynasty managers be worried?
Well, let me put the shades back on here and not mess up my microphone. Yeah, well, I do think there's some cause for concern. Mm-hmm. It's a terrible injury, especially for someone who has to utilize, quick movements like all NFL players do, but especially at that position. Yeah, it is concerning. I mean, what are you going to do if he's in your dynasty league? Are you going to sell the value at its lowest point, or are you going to hold? For me, if I'm in dynasty, I'm holding. Because it doesn't really mean anything for me to sell low. Yeah, right
I'm not
now
looking for pennies on the dollar.
Exactly.
He was such a high capital draft pick in recent rookie drafts, and I think my advice would just be to pay attention to the moves by the Ravens this year, and especially going into the offseason, the draft, at free agency. If you don't see them making moves to kind of supplement J.K. Dobbins, that's usually a pretty strong indicator that they're confident in his ability to come back and take a big workload. So, just keep an eye on it. Don't make any moves yet. I think that it is more likely than not that he will come back to form. So don't take the gamble of selling for pennies on the dollar. I think that's spot on. This one we'll just touch on quickly. Carson Wentz placed on the reserve COVID list. I only bring it up because his offseason so far has been kind of snake bit in terms of bad luck with injuries and things. How do you feel about that offense? Are you confident in Carson Wentz? Is he the player that we've seen the last couple of years? Do you project a return to the MVP season caliber in Philadelphia? A lot of question marks. What are we looking at, AJ? Make it make sense.
So to me, instead of this hinging on Carson Wentz, a lot of this to me will hinge on Eric Fisher, the left tackle, because when that offensive line gels together, you have all pros in Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly. You've got Braden Smith, Mark Glowinski, I believe is the pronunciation of that last name. Anthony Costanzo is gone, longtime left tackle, even from the early Andrew Luck days. And then obviously the stable of running backs, and then whatever you feel about Doyle and Mo Alley Cox And then, whoever your favorite young, outside of Hilton, young Colts wide receiver is, insert young Colts wide receiver here.
Yep.
If Eric Fisher is healthy and playing at a high Eric Fisher level, then I think Carson Wentz will, he's going to throw interceptions. He's going to throw touchdowns. He's going to move in the pocket. So basically, he doesn't have the experience of Phillip Rivers, but he's got the mobility. Maybe these things equal out and they ride that defense, or they ride that offensive line and running back room. I think that you're basically getting a boom bust prospect like streaming option from Carson Wentz if he manages to get back on the field. And if he does, I mean, there are very few offensive lines capable of keeping any quarterback upright like the offensive line in Indianapolis.
Yes, but they cannot protect him from catching COVID. So
those are facts. It's just
it's a good line, but they're not that good.
Yeah. Could you imagine if they could protect their quarterbacks from diseases?
If only there was a way.
If only there was a way. God,
moving on. Before we get too far into the weeds, let's see. I am going to pull up this one. We'll hit a couple last ones here, kind of a lightning round. Just give us some quick hitter thoughts. Giants running back Saquon Barkley has a strong, quote unquote, strong chance of suiting up for Week 1 against the Broncos. Where are you on Barkley? He is a much discussed topic of conversation in the last couple of weeks. The draft community, especially on our show, a lot of Giants fans in the area of our listener demographics. How should we feel?
I mean, keep your finger on the pulse. I trust what coaches tell the media, not at all, very much, which is sort of standard fare.
And they don't have to right now. So.
They absolutely don't have to. So just keep your finger on the pulse. Don't forget, it is Saquon Barkley. It's that same Saquon Barkley that's the absolute animal behind a poor offensive line. So take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, I think it's a good news that we're not really hearing any negatives in terms of his development,
right.
his timeline. So once those things start popping up, if they do, caution. But for now, I think take the value where he falls. He's falling late in the first, early second. That is potentially the steal of the century. I am going to bring up one last piece of news here. Don't know if it means anything. Peyton Barber has been signed off the Washington football team's practice squad and will join the Raiders' 53-player roster in Las Vegas because they just didn't have enough running backs, I guess, over there. They needed a third one. Does this mean anything for the starters? Peyton Barber has been a perennial pain in the butt on depth charts in the past, turning things into sort of timeshares. What does this mean for Las Vegas?
I don't know what anything means in Las Vegas. I don't know. I can't make sense of anything.
That's how they make their money in Las Vegas.
I'm telling you, I think everyone in the Raiders organization has really embraced just the feel of Vegas, and no one has any clue what's going on there. I mean, what does this mean that Kenyon Drake didn't already mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Josh Jacobs has taken a huge hit in ADP, since last year, and I think that this doesn't help. It's certainly not a vote of confidence. Like I said, pay attention to personnel moves and things, and it'll tell you a lot about how the team feels about its players and kind of their plans for the season. I wasn't really in on Jacobs anyway, and this does not do anything to help the situation. But, that's what they do in Las Vegas, man. They keep people disoriented, and that's how they get you. That's kind of their calling card. So both on the Raiders and in their casinos. I'm going to take this opportunity to transition us to a little game that I have not prepped you on in advance. We have a weekly segment on our show called Roto Olympics as a sort of a nod to our fine hobby, rotisserie football, also known as fantasy football, also known as Roto football. So we play some games on here and, test our guests, see how up they are in their knowledge of the game and sort of recent events. We do play it sometimes with callers who call in. Obviously, we have nobody on the line right now. Mike might have been a fun one to play it with earlier, or it could have been a disaster. But we're gonna do it solo for now.
He didn't seem very bright. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, that seems like maybe a genetic issue. So we are going to play Roto Olympics. We were going to do volleyball, which would have been between two people, but you know what? Since we have one person, we're going to call it, I don't know, the high jump, the long jump, the javelin. It's all loosely connected. So the rules of this game, I'm going to throw out a category, and you're going to name as many players as you can off the top of your head who you think fit in that category. Does that make sense?
As much as it's ever going to me, Greg. Thank you.
Yeah, it'll become clear, I think, as we start to play. Because you're our only competitor, you are by default going to win the gold medal in Roto Olympics today. That is my return gift to you in exchange for the McCorkle trophy that you awarded me last time I was on your show. It is the least I can do. And no matter what happens today, you're going to leave a winner. So let's get started. The first category, keep in mind, I choose these because I spot some outliers or interesting names in the group that I would like to highlight and kind of bring to light. The first category here is defenses, like NFL team defenses that allowed more than 430 points to opponents through all of last season. So defenses that have given up a lot of points in games. These might be defenses that you're thinking of targeting offensive weapons against this year, which is why I like to bring this up. Who do you got off the top of your head? There are, I believe, 10 of them.
So I'm going to go division by division here. I would say the Jets are probably one.
The Jets are very last on that list. They give up 437. They just made the cut.
Okay.
Surprisingly.
I would say the Bengals are probably on that list.
The Bengals, shockingly, are not. I think that they were just below it.
Wow,
yeah.
That is full of jazz. How about the Texans?
Yeah, Texans are on the list. They're number 454. I think they're going to be on that list again this year.
Ditto. Jaguars.
Jaguars, number 2, 488 points.
Good for them.
I guess good for their opponents.
Yeah. I'm going to go with the Lions.
The Lions are number 1 on that list. The only ones over 500. They gave up 501 points over the course of the season.
Winning.
They're looking at a repeat. There are a couple more. You could take some stabs. If not, we'll move on.
I've also got the Falcons in there.
Falcons are not somehow on that list.
Wow, that is shocking to me and my people.
I think that is their brand. I think the narrative with the Falcons is always that they're in shootouts. They throw a lot because their defense sucks. I think they just throw a lot. I think that really is the accurate story. Their defense in terms of points given up last year was closer to middle of the pack, and I don't think that gets talked about much, but they just don't have a run game. So I think that is their. I don't think that's going to change much now with Julio out of town. I think they're still going to throw a lot.
Give me the Chargers, Greg.
The Chargers are not on that list. That was a good guess, though. I will, for the sake of expediency, give you the Titans were on that list, the Cowboys, and the aforementioned Vikings, which I don't think is going to continue this year.
No.
And the Raiders. Derek Carr throws a lot every year. He is one of the only quarterbacks in the league, incidentally, with more than 4,000 passing yards the last 2 years straight. He's one of like 5. So surprising given how little love there is for his wide receivers. And I guess that just means all the more for Darren Waller in Las Vegas. So just some trends to keep an eye on, maybe some defenses to target this year if you think those trends are going to continue, and maybe offenses who we can expect to throw a lot more than they run. So let's move on to our second category. You did great with that first one, by the way. Very impressed with your jumping prowess. I don't really watch enough Olympics to like make an accurate comparison, but I bet you cleared that bar. That's the pole vault, isn't it? Where they jump over the bar.
Like a 747 on top of one of those bouncy balls at the gym, Greg.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Category number 2, wide receivers with 80% or higher goal line catch rate. So that's from the 5-yard line. To qualify for this, they must have received at least 5 targets in 2020. So the reason I bring this up is because a lot of teams get to the goal line within the 5. They ground and pound. They run the ball. There are some wide receiver weapons out there who are relied on because they're really good at this, at these kind of short fades and sometimes the horizontal passes. Who do you think gets a lot of usage and finds a lot of success on the goal line?
Give me Mike Evans to start with.
Mike Evans, surprisingly not on that list. He got a couple targets, couple touchdowns, didn't surpass the 5 target threshold.
Okay, give me one Keenan Allen.
Keenan Allen does not make it. This is a tough category, man. This is why I put this in there.
Yeah,
because I think that the people who make this list, this is a metric that you need to factor into how you feel about their prospects this season.
How about Hopkins? Give me one DeAndre Hopkins.
Not on there, man.
Oh, that's
who's like the number one person though that you think of as like a end zone wide receiver, like a red zone threat. The only one on his team, pretty much. Quarterback is in love with him as a red zone option. Going as the number one wide receiver this year.
Devante Adams.
He was 9 for 11 targets, 82% catch rate, 7 touchdowns within the 5. That is nuts.
Goodness gracious.
A lot of people love Aaron Jones. I think he's going to be a much higher yardage guy than he is a touchdown guy. I think he kind of always is. Not that they don't have a lot of scoring opportunities, but they get inside that 5. Aaron Jones is not afraid to chuck it.
What about Mike Williams?
Mike Williams is not on that list, but he would have been a good one. I think maybe just because of the time that he spent off the field last year, but I feel like he does get a lot of targets, looks in the red zone.
I think that's more of a projection. I think you could see him climb into that.
There's one more that I think is pretty obvious, and then I'll give you the rest of them. But this guy is in the NFC North along with Devante Adams. He had a ridiculous rate of touchdown catches last season. He is no longer really looked at as the number one wide receiver on his team. Maybe just transitioning to more of a red zone guy.
You said the AFC North?
NFC North.
Pretty
much sustained his value just on touchdowns last year.
Would that be Thielen?
It is. Adam Thielen, number 2 on that list. He was caught 7 of 8 targets within the 5 for 7 touchdowns. Every single of those catches was a touchdown. So
hot dog.
I think that role is kind of going to continue for him this year. We talked about how we think the defense is going to be better, so maybe not as many passes between the 20s, but certainly within the 5, I think they're going to lean on Thielen. So he's not getting much love this year. Maybe he should. The other 3 on that list, surprisingly, Tyler Lockett, 7 for 7, 100% catch rate within the 5, 6 touchdowns. You look at DK Metcalf, you figure surely he's the red zone option, but he's only 2 for 4 within the 5. So Tyler Lockett, more of a red zone threat, I think, than people think. Tyreke Hill, 5 for 6 with 4 touchdowns.
I knew that one too. Gosh.
Yeah, another guy you might not expect to be the primary receiving threat within the 5 with Kelsey on the team, but they look at Tyreke Hill a lot for some of those kind of short gadget throws, and they let him, outdance the coverage, and he does. And the last one, T. Higgins. You could have given me 100 guesses. I probably wouldn't have got that, but he was 4 for 5, 80%, 4 touchdowns.
He fits the physical profile of what you generally think, but yeah, he'd be way down on my guess list.
Yeah, just with a run game like they have in Cincinnati with Joe Mixon, you figured they're probably handing it off more often than not. But T. Higgins getting a lot of looks within the 5-yard line. So I thought that was an interesting metric, maybe something to consider. Kind of keeping within the theme of sort of unconventional wide receiver metrics, I pulled up a list of wide receivers with 10 or more rushing attempts in 2020. There are 8 of them. Can you get them, and how many?
And this is within the 5?
No, just 10 or more rushing attempts in general.
In 2020?
In 2020, wide receivers.
Chase
getting a lot of carries.
Chase Claypool.
Chase Claypool is on that list, exactly 10. And I think he will continue to be on this list in 2021.
Quick side, as a Notre Dame fan, seeing him run in the NFL is beyond me. They used to send him on jet sweeps that Notre Dame fans would cringe at every single time. Anyway,
he's a big, strong dude, and I think it's just more about counting on him to make a play with the ball in his hands, less so than it is just thinking of him as a super fast runner who's going to get the edge and outrun the coverage. I think it's just, can you bring this guy down?
Give me Tyreke Hill.
Tyreek Hill, 13 carries. He is on the list.
Give me Tyler Lockett.
Tyler Lockett, not on the list. He only made the goal line list here.
Okay. Give me Jarvis Landry.
Jarvis Landry, I feel like, is always on this list in years past, but last year, not so much. I think that they just have enough going on in that run game between Chubb and Hunt. They don't need to lean on him as much.
Be a little redundant.
Yeah.
Oh,
Take a couple more, and then
give me
I'll bail you out.
Patterson.
Cordarrelle Patterson?
Yeah, he's going as a running back, isn't he?
Probably. He's surprisingly not on this list, but I know that the year before he definitely would have been. I watched him long enough on the Bears, kind of supplementing the holes in our banged up running back corps in years past. But
Yeah.
I will tell you that there is one person on this list who is significantly higher than everybody else, and I was kind of surprised because I knew he ran a lot, but I didn't know it was that much. Number one on this list is Curtis Samuel. He's got 41 carries last year.
Yeah.
41 carries. I don't know if he's a real legitimate threat to take carries in the run game this year in any meaningful way, but that he is, he's a guy who's useful in a lot of different ways. He's got a coach who I think is not afraid to use him in that way, kind of throwing it to him behind the line of scrimmage and hoping he can make something happen. But he, is more than quadruple pretty much most of the people on this list. I just thought that was worth noting.
Indeed.
Number two is Robert Woods. He's another one of those guys who you don't really look at as like a prototypical runner, somebody whose hands you want the ball in to make things happen after the catch, but they apparently have a lot of confidence in him. Sean McVay, I guess, knows what he's doing. Ty Montgomery's number 3 on this list.
I'm shocked he had enough to make that list.
Me too. Laviska Shenault, number 4,
that
18 carries. Yeah. I think that number is going to go up this year. I'm a big Laviska Shenault guy. A lot of questions about who's going to be the most useful wide receiver in the Jacksonville offense this year. I'm on the Shenault train, man. I'm not DJ Chark guy. Where do you weigh in on that? Are you a Marvin Jones fan?
In terms of player, Greg, there is one to me that is head and shoulders above the other two, and that's in terms of potential, and that's Laviska Shenault.
Yeah.
In terms of the player coming out of Colorado, you're looking at he came out at 6'2", 225, like AJ Brown kind of size almost, and it was goodness gracious, the way he moves, how versatile he is. This guy has sky limits potential. I like Chark the player. I don't like Chark the situation. I don't like Chark the fantasy receiver. But Shenault, far and away.
Yeah, Chark is somebody I was worried was really going to be overvalued by the fantasy community this year, just with Trevor Lawrence coming in. I think that there was a consensus amongst more casual players that Chark was going to be the clear-cut one in that offense, catching passes from a number 1 overall quarterback prospect. But I think the community really smartened up and saw enough from Shenault last year and saw Marvin Jones come in that they're kind of hedging on Chark as the kind of the clear number 1. I think that there's still a drumbeat for him. But I think that those people have not been paying as much attention to Shenault last year. He put up numbers even in a bad offense, passes the eye test. I'm all about it. The other players on that list, CeeDee Lamb, another big sleeper name coming. Well, maybe not a sleeper so much as just somebody who a lot of people feel like is being drafted below his floor and his ceiling on a high octane Dallas offense. A lot of people out there cool taking him as their wide receiver 1. I don't hate it. Like I said earlier, if you start running back, and you want to take a shot at CD as your 1, power to you. Last one was Isaiah McKenzie. He's our bonus. So,
oh, buddy, absolutely, that is deep.
There you go, man.
That is deep.
That is our Roto Olympic session for the day.
Oh, it's amazing. I loved it.
You did great, man. I am proud and pleased to award you the prestigious gold medal in Roto Olympics from Fantasy Fanline. Do you want to make a speech? Is there anybody you want to thank? I will take that digital cheers.
Yeah, well, I would like to thank Jack Swarbrick and Reverend John Jenkins and Brian Kelly for continuing to put quality product into Notre Dame Stadium every year. And hopefully we can go out against Florida State and get the win tomorrow. I'd like to thank them.
Love it. And I'm sure they appreciate, I know that they're listening. They're big fans of the show. And, maybe we'll hear from them in the coming days. Dude, we are just over an hour. This has been a lot of fun. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up? Anything on your mind?
Yeah. This has been so much fun, Greg. I love this. This is super cool. I think this is it's new, it's novel, but I think I love it. I think this has the staying power. We're certainly going to try to have you back. I think Colt and Ryan would love to do this, especially Colt. Ryan, I don't know if I can get him to sit still or be serious for an hour and 4 minutes.
That's okay. There's room for that on this show. Colt, I have a bone to pick next time you talk with him. I know that he took the Packers to win the Super Bowl on your last episode, kind of breaking down your predictions. And, I was thinking about if he called in today, I was going back and forth on whether or not I was going to hang up on him, to be honest. And that ended up not being a problem because he didn't call in. But you know what? We didn't need him anyway. We had a great time.
I'll call him. Do you want me to hang up on him?
Dude, yes. Like with no explanation.
Done.
I would appreciate that as a personal favor, as a friend, if you could do that for me and just never tell him what it was about. And maybe someday if he comes back and listens to this episode, he's going to be like, oh my God, I just thought we had like a bad connection or something.
That's like the opposite of doing something nice for someone and not telling them about it.
Yeah. If you could throw some shade at your friend and co-host on my behalf and never really let him know what it's about, I would appreciate that. I would consider that a favor and I would owe you one. In all seriousness,
yes.
I love Colt and he's welcome on the show anytime.
This was so much fun, Greg. Thank you so much. I had an absolute blast, man. I love this.
Dude, thank you for being here. I'm sure we'll get you back on later in the season and get some more callers on the line once we pick up some traction. Do you want to take the last couple minutes here to plug your show one more time? Let the people know how to find you in case they're just joining us.
Hey, if you don't know, now you know. It's the SWF podcast, the Shall We Football with a little question mark podcast. We're unfiltered, unprofessional, unruly. It's surprising that we know what we're talking about because I made a lot of Law and Order references on the last episode, which is really stupid and silly. It has nothing to do with football. But we have
you
fun.
guys are self-described adult children with microphones. I think it says in your bio. And
that's exactly what we are.
As somebody who appeared on your show, I can vouch for that description. I think that's extremely accurate. Something I really love about your show, it's one of my favorites out there in the industry for the conversation. There are different reasons you listen to different shows. Some of them are just, hard hitting with the numbers and the analytics, and there's a place for that. But there's also a really important place for conversation in our community. That's why I started this show. If you do your own kind of analytics, your own research, stay in your own lane, get locked into your takes, I think it is easy to miss things. And if you're not willing to have your mind changed and listen to other people's takes on things, I don't think you're going to find as much success in this game. So, love your show, love your conversation. Happy to come back on anytime and be a part of it.
Let's bring people together. I love it.
Yeah. Thanks for doing the show, man. It means a lot. Everybody who agreed to be a guest on the show before we even did any episodes, you're very brave. You came on, didn't know what you were getting yourself into. And hopefully we can do this a lot more in the future and build some success. So I'm going to wrap things up here. We are live every Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Twitch. You can find us with our expert guests every weekend, at least at the end of the regular season. We'll see about going into the off season, see where we're at by the end of the year. If you like the show, please leave us a review, tell a friend, visit our website, fantasyfanline.com, to see our full schedule of upcoming guests. And thank you for tuning in. We will talk to you next time on Fantasy Fanline. Goodbye.